The sky above Veros 9 blazed with a perpetual twilight, the binary stars casting eerie purple shadows through the dense canopy of the bioluminescent forest. Brilliant indigo spores drifted like snow between massive tree trunks that pulsed with internal light, blue when calm, warning red when disturbed. It was beautiful, mesmerizing, and designated as the most dangerous ecosystem in the Outer Rim territories. Elysia Trent had memorized the warning briefings. Every survey apprentice did. Veros 9, Xenobiological Exclusion Zone. No landings authorized without Level 5 clearance. The planet's reputation was legendary among the Interstellar Survey Corps. 3 expedition teams lost in the past decade alone. The last transmission from the final team contained only 7 words before dissolving into static. It hunts anything that moves. God help us. That creature had a name now, the Night Veil, though no one who had seen it clearly had survived to provide a proper taxonomic classification. The fragments of data retrieved from damaged equipment suggested something large, something fast, and something with an unnerving predilection for hunting down any living thing that crossed its territory, none of which Elysia had considered particularly relevant to her own life until approximately 3 hours ago, when the atmospheric sampler shuttle she was piloting had experienced catastrophic engine failure directly over the planet's northern hemisphere. "Shuttle 7 to Artemis Base," she called into her communications array for the 100th time, adjusting the survival pack strapped to her environment suit. "Emergency landing coordinates logged at Sector 12 Gamma. Life support failing. Request immediate extraction." Static answered, as it had since her Mayday call. The view screen of her pod displayed the status of her vessel in harsh red letters. Primary systems failure. Life support. 17 minutes remaining. Elysia ran her fingers across the console. The movements automatic after months of training. 17 minutes of breathable air inside a shuttle that was rapidly becoming a coffin. The alternative was outside, a toxic atmosphere filled with hallucinogenic spores and home to the most efficient killer the Survey Corps had ever encountered. "Apprentice Trent, this is Dr. Halverson." The sudden voice crackled through her comms, distorted, but unmistakably her mentor's measured tones. "Your beacon is active. We have your position." Relief flooded through her. "Dr. Halverson, the shuttle's dying. Life support critical. How soon can extraction arrive?" A long pause followed, filled with the sound of distant conversations and what might have been an argument. "Elysia, listen carefully." Dr. Halverson's voice returned, now tight with controlled emotion. "Atmospheric conditions are deteriorating. The magnetic storms are intensifying. Extraction cannot launch for at least 12 hours. The numbers didn't add up. Elysia stared at the life support counter. 16 minutes. "I don't have 12 hours. Doctor, I barely have 16 minutes. "I know," Halverson said, voice softening. "You need to exit the shuttle before life support fails completely. Your environment suit has a 72-hour oxygen supply. That should be sufficient until we can reach you." Elysia's throat constricted. "You want me to go outside, on Veros 9? "It's your only chance. Elysia, we're coming for you, I promise. But you need to survive until then." The console flashed again. "Life support. 15 minutes remaining." "The Night Veil," she whispered. "It's out there." "Your suit has stealth capabilities," Halverson reminded her. "Find shelter, stay hidden, and remain in radio contact as long as the magnetic storms allow. The xenobiologists have theories about the creature's hunting patterns. If necessary, we'll relay strategies." Elysia closed her eyes briefly, gathering courage. "Understood. I'm going out." "We're coming for you," Halverson repeated firmly. "Remember your training." The final preparations took precious minutes from her dwindling life support. Elysia checked her environment suit's integrity, secured her survival pack, and transferred the shuttle's emergency beacon to her wrist communicator. With trembling fingers, She activated the suit's full spectrum of defensive systems: thermal masking, motion dampeners, and the experimental photonic camouflage that would, in theory, render her nearly invisible to most known predator vision systems. Life support, 7 minutes remaining. Alicia took a deep breath and initiated the airlock sequence. As the outer door slid open, the verdant glow of Veros 9's forest spilled into the sterile confines of her shuttle. The trees seemed to breathe with light, pulsing in slow, hypnotic rhythms. Beautiful and deadly. A combination that defined almost everything on this forbidden world. The first step onto the alien soil sent vibrations through her boots. Not unpleasant, but distinctly different from any terrain she had experienced in training. The ground had a slight give to it, like walking on dense moss, and each footfall triggered a momentary brightening in the luminescent fungi that carpeted the forest floor. Alicia activated her suit's atmospheric sensors. The display flashed a series of warnings. Atmosphere: toxic, class 3. Hallucinogens present. Ambient radiation: elevated. Non-lethal biotic activity: extreme. The last indicator caused her the most concern. The suit's proximity sensors were designed to detect movement of living organisms within a 50-meter radius. Currently, the display showed dozens of small signals, presumably the native fauna, and one much larger reading at the extreme edge of her detection range. A reading that was moving directly toward her position. "Artemis Base. This is Trent," she whispered into her comm, the tremor in her voice betraying her fear. "I've exited the shuttle. Sensors indicate large biotic signature approaching my position from the northwest. Please advise." Dr. Halverson's response came through in fragments, the magnetic interference already affecting communications. "Stealth mode. Avoid detection. Movement triggers." The transmission dissolved into unintelligible static, but the message was clear enough. The Night Veil, hunted by movement. Her best chance was to remain as still as possible and hope her suit's camouflage systems were sufficient to mask her presence. Alicia pressed herself against the shuttle's hull, activating the suit's maximum stealth protocols. The photonic camouflage hummed to life, bending light around her form and matching the patterns of the shuttle's exterior. To any observer, she would appear as nothing more than a slight distortion in the air, a heat mirage or atmospheric anomaly. The biotic signature drew closer. 40 meters. 30, 20. She held her breath, though the rational part of her mind knew the suit's oxygen recyclers made such an action unnecessary. Ancient instinct, older than human spaceflight, older than civilization itself, commanded her body to freeze, to become as still as stone. At 15 meters, she saw it. The Night Veil emerged from between two massive tree trunks, moving with a fluid grace that belied its size. It stood nearly 3 meters tall, with a sleek, muscular body covered in what appeared to be overlapping plates of bioluminescent tissue. 8 limbs, 4 for locomotion and 4 seemingly adapted for grasping and tearing, propelled it through the underbrush with barely a sound. Its elongated head housed multiple sensory organs that pulsed with the same ethereal light as the forest around it, creating a perfect camouflage that broke only when it moved. It was, Alicia realized with a scientist's detachment, that somehow coexisted with her terror. Perfectly evolved for this environment. A true apex predator, so attuned to its surroundings that it had become almost an extension of the forest itself. The creature paused, its head swiveling toward the shuttle. Something that might have been nostrils flared at the end of its snout, sampling the air. The bioluminescent patterns across its body shifted from the ambient blue-green of the forest to a deeper, more intense indigo, a change that Alicia's training suggested might indicate heightened alertness or hunting behavior. For an agonizing minute, the Night Veil remained motionless, its senses clearly detecting something unusual, but unable to precisely locate the threat. Then, with a low sound that resonated somewhere between a growl and the vibration of crystal, It continued past the shuttle and disappeared into the forest. Alicia released the breath she'd been holding, her heart hammering against her ribs. She'd survived her first encounter with the legendary predator of Veros 9. But night was falling, and the extraction team was still at least 12 hours away. Staying beside the damaged shuttle was too risky. Its power systems were deteriorating, and the resulting electromagnetic disturbances would eventually attract attention. She needed shelter, somewhere defensible, where she could monitor her surroundings and establish communication with Artemis Base when the magnetic storm subsided. Her suit's mapping system had downloaded the limited survey data available for this region. Approximately 2 kilometers to the east, a previous expedition had established a temporary research outpost before disappearing. If any of the structures remained, they might provide better protection than the open forest. The decision made, Alicia activated her suit's enhanced motion dampeners and began moving eastward, placing each step with deliberate care. The forest floor continued to respond to her presence, subtle pulses of light spreading outward from each footfall like ripples in water. She adjusted her pace, testing different pressures and rhythms until she found a pattern that minimized the bioluminescent reaction. The journey through the alien forest became a masterclass in controlled movement. Alicia kept her pace steady, her breathing measured, her senses hyper-aware of every sound and shift of light around her. Twice more. Her proximity sensors detected large, biotic signatures in the distance, but each time she froze in place, becoming one more shadow among many until the danger passed. As true night descended on Veros 9, the forest transformed. What had been merely beautiful in the twilight became spectacular in darkness. Every tree, every fungal growth, every patch of moss emitted its own signature glow. Spores drifted through the air like fireflies, creating constellations that shifted and reformed with the gentle forest breezes. Under different circumstances, Alicia would have been entranced by the display. Now, she saw only greater difficulty in detecting the night veil against this carnival of living light. The research outpost appeared suddenly before her, a cluster of prefabricated structures nestled in a small clearing. The buildings showed clear signs of abandonment, entrances left open, equipment scattered, and most ominously, long claw marks scoring the metallic walls. Alicia approached cautiously, her suit's sensors sweeping for any signs of life or danger. The main research module appeared structurally sound, despite the exterior damage. Alicia slipped inside, closing and securing the door behind her. The interior was a testament to a hasty evacuation, or worse. Tables overturned, datapads shattered, and dried substances that her suit's scanner identified as human blood staining the floor in several locations. "Artemis Base, this is Trent," she transmitted, hoping the relative shelter of the research module might improve communications. "I've reached the abandoned research outpost in Sector 12 Gamma 3. No survivors present. Requesting status update on extraction." To her surprise, Dr. Halverson's voice came through with surprising clarity. "Alicia! Thank goodness. The magnetic storm is beginning to abate. We've dispatched Rescue Team Alpha with Pilot Marlowe. ETA approximately 10 hours. Are you secure?" "As secure as I can be," she replied, conducting a more thorough inspection of the research module. "The outpost has power reserves. I'm activating the security systems now." "Good. The rescue shuttle will home in on your beacon. Until then, maintain stealth protocols. The night veil."
"I have seen it," Alicia interrupted. "It passed within meters of me at the crash site. Dr. Halverson, it's unlike anything in our databases."
A long pause followed. "You observed it and survived. That's more data than we've recovered from any previous encounter. Your observations could be invaluable." Alicia moved deeper into the research module, discovering a functional terminal. "I'm accessing the outpost's data archives. Maybe the previous team recorded something useful before they were lost." The terminal hummed to life, its screen flickering with stored data files. Most were corrupted or incomplete, but several video logs remained intact. Alicia opened the earliest recording, and the face of a haggard researcher filled the screen. Log entry 47, Dr. Samantha Voss reporting. Day 15 on Veros 9. We've observed the apex predator species 3 times now. Its hunting patterns are unlike anything in recorded xenobiology. It doesn't just detect movement. It seems fixated on it. Completely ignores stationary objects or organisms, no matter their size or heat signature. Unfortunately, on a planet where even the plants move in response to stimuli, staying motionless is nearly impossible. Alicia felt a chill at these words. The forest floor had illuminated with her every step. If the predator was attuned to such subtle movements, she opened the next intact log. A different researcher appeared, visibly shaken. It took Martinez. We watched it happen. He tried to run when the creature appeared at the perimeter. The movement triggered immediate pursuit. It was so fast. We couldn't help him. But afterward, the strangest thing happened. Ellis was frozen in fear, didn't move a muscle, and the creature walked right past him, didn't even seem to perceive him. We need to test this hypothesis further, but resources are dwindling, and Command is talking about abandoning the recording cut off abruptly. Alicia searched for additional logs, finding only one more that would play. The same researcher appeared, now pale and wild-eyed. It's been 7 days since contact with the extraction team. We can only assume they've been lost as well. Our remaining supplies will last another 2 days at most. We're going to attempt to reach the emergency beacon station in Sector 10. It's 15 kilometers through dense forest. But it's our only hope. If anyone receives this, the key to surviving the night veil is absolute stillness. It perceives the world primarily through movement. If you don't move, not even to breathe visibly, it cannot see you. We've tested this repeatedly now. It's our only. A crash sounded in the background of the recording. The researcher's eyes widened in terror as he looked over his shoulder. The last frame showed a blur of bioluminescent patterns entering the frame before the transmission ended. Alicia sat back, processing this information. The night veil hunted movement with single-minded precision, but seemed nearly blind to stationary objects or beings. It explained how she had survived their first encounter. Her stealth protocols and instinctive freezing had rendered her effectively invisible to the creature. But remaining completely motionless for extended periods wasn't a viable long-term strategy. The extraction team was still 9 hours away. According to her chronometer, 9 hours of perfect stillness was impossible, especially if she needed to move to different shelter or avoid other threats. A sudden alert from her suit's proximity sensors jolted her from these thoughts. A large biotic signature was approaching the research outpost from the south, moving with purpose directly toward her position. The night veil had found her. Panic threatened to overwhelm Alicia's training. Had it tracked her movements through the forest? Had it detected her life signs despite the suit's masking technology? Or was this simply its territory, and her presence an unfortunate coincidence? The answers mattered less than immediate survival. Alicia quickly assessed her options. The research module's security systems were rudimentary, designed to keep out smaller wildlife, not deter an apex predator. Attempting to hide within the structure would likely prove futile if the creature decided to force entry. Running would trigger its pursuit instinct, according to the logs. That left one desperate strategy: test the researcher's hypothesis. Perfect stillness. Alicia positioned herself in the center of the main room, away from anything that might move or make noise. She deactivated all non-essential suit functions to minimize electromagnetic emissions and potential vibrations. Then, drawing on her training in meditative techniques, originally intended to conserve oxygen during space emergencies, she slowed her breathing to imperceptible levels and fixed her gaze on a single point on the opposite wall. The proximity alert continued to pulse in her peripheral vision. 30 meters, 20, 10. A tremendous impact shook the research module. Metal groaned as powerful limbs pried at the exterior plating. Alicia remained frozen, fighting every instinct to flee or hide. A section of wall tore away with a screech of protesting metal, and ambient forest light spilled into the room. The night veil entered, its bioluminescent patterns shifting rapidly between hunting indigo and alert crimson. It filled the space with its presence, massive and terrifying in the confined area. Its sensory organs pulsed as it scanned the room, passing over equipment, furniture, and finally, Alicia herself. She didn't blink, didn't twitch, barely breathed. The creature moved closer, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from its body. A sound like crystal chimes emanated from somewhere within its chest cavity as it extended one grasping limb toward her face. The appendage stopped, centimeters from her faceplate, hovering there as the creature's head tilted in what appeared to be confusion or curiosity. For an excruciating moment, predator and prey existed in perfect stasis, neither moving, both fully aware of the other's presence. Then, with a final resonant tone, the night veil withdrew its limb and turned away, apparently losing interest in the motionless human. It moved through the research module, investigating the space with methodical thoroughness. Twice more it returned to Alicia, each time studying her stillness before moving on. Eventually, it exited through the same breach it had created and disappeared into the forest. Only when her proximity sensors confirmed the creature was well beyond detection range did Alicia allow herself to breathe normally again. Her muscles screamed in protest as she finally relaxed her rigid posture. The strategy had worked. Perfect stillness had rendered her effectively invisible to the most dangerous predator on Veros 9. But the encounter had left the research module compromised. The breach in the wall exposed her to the elements and created an easy access point should the night veil return. She needed to find more secure shelter for the remaining 8 hours before extraction. The outpost records indicated a secondary facility, approximately 1 kilometer north. A smaller structure built into the side of a rock formation that might offer better protection. Alicia gathered the few useful supplies remaining in the module and prepared to move again, knowing that each step through the forest was an invitation to the night veil's hunt. The journey to the secondary facility proved more challenging than her previous trek. The forest grew denser, the bioluminescent response to her movements more pronounced. Twice, she detected the night veil's signature on her proximity sensors, forcing her to freeze in place for long minutes until the creature moved on to other hunting grounds. By the time she reached the rock formation, exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her. The secondary facility was partially concealed by massive tree roots that had grown over and around the structure, providing natural camouflage. Unlike the main research module, this building appeared intact, its entrance sealed and security systems still operational. Alicia accessed the entry panel, grateful to find it responded to her Survey Corps credentials. The door slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a small but well-preserved interior. This had been the researchers' secure data repository, a reinforced structure designed to withstand the planet's environmental hazards and protect valuable scientific findings. "Artemis Base, this is Trent," she transmitted, once safely inside. "I've relocated to the secondary facility. The main research module was compromised." Static greeted her, punctuated by fragments of words. The magnetic storm was intensifying again, disrupting communications. Alicia checked her chronometer. 7 hours until estimated extraction. She would need to survive on her own until then. The facility systems included environmental controls, basic medical equipment, and most importantly, a comprehensive database of the research team's findings. Alicia accessed the terminal, searching for any additional information about the night veil that might improve her chances of survival. The database contained detailed anatomical speculations based on fleeting observations and recovered tissue samples. The creature's bioluminescence wasn't merely decorative. It appeared to be an integral part of its sensory system. The patterns of light across its body shifted in response to environmental stimuli, creating a visual language that the researchers had only begun to decipher. Most intriguing were the notes on the night vale's behavior outside of hunting. The creature had been observed bringing food to injured members of its own species, evidence of social structures previously thought impossible in such specialized predators. It communicated through bioluminescent signals and the crystalline vocalizations Alicia had heard during their encounter. One researcher had proposed a radical theory. The night vale's fixation on movement wasn't simply a hunting strategy, but a fundamental aspect of its worldview. In its perception, things that moved were alive, and therefore either threats or prey. Things that remained still were considered part of the environment, no more worthy of attention than rocks or trees. If this theory was correct, Alicia's stillness during their encounter hadn't just made her difficult to detect, it had rendered her conceptually invisible to the creature. Not a threat, not prey, simply part of the background of its world. A sudden alert from the facility's external sensors interrupted her research. Something large was moving outside the structure, circling it methodically. The night vale had found her again. Alicia accessed the external cameras, watching as the creature investigated the facility. Unlike its aggressive entry into the research module, it seemed more cautious here, testing the structure's integrity without attempting to breach it. After several circuits, it settled at the entrance, its body blocking the only exit. It was waiting for her. 7 hours until extraction suddenly seemed like an eternity. The facility's life support and defenses were robust, but designed for environmental hazards, not a siege by an intelligent predator. If the night vale remained at the entrance, she would eventually need to confront it to reach the extraction point. Unless... An idea formed in Alicia's mind, one born of desperation and the strange insights gleaned from the researcher's notes. If the night vale categorized the world into moving and non-moving, perhaps there was a third category it understood: things that moved only in specific, non-threatening ways. The researchers had documented the creature bringing food to injured members of its own species. Those injured individuals would have been moving, but not in ways that triggered hunting behavior. What if she could communicate her non-threat status through carefully controlled movement? It was a dangerous theory to test, but Alicia's options were dwindling. The extraction team would expect her at the rendezvous coordinates, not hidden in this remote facility. She needed to resolve this standoff one way or another. Drawing on the database's information about the night vale's communication patterns, Alicia devised a desperate plan. She would exit the facility and attempt to establish non-threatening contact with the creature. If she failed, she would rely on her suit's stealth systems and the stillness strategy that had worked before. If she succeeded, well, the xenobiologists back at Artemis Base would have unprecedented data on first contact with Veros 9's apex predator. Artemis Base, this is Trent, she transmitted, knowing the message might not reach through the magnetic interference. The night vale has located me again. I'm going to attempt communication based on research findings. If you receive this, inform the extraction team to proceed with caution to the rendezvous coordinates. I'll be there, one way or another. Alicia prepared herself methodically, checking her suit's integrity and recording systems. Whatever happened next would be valuable scientific data, regardless of the personal outcome. She accessed the facility's door controls and took a deep breath. The door slid open, revealing the night vale still positioned outside. It rose to its full height as the door opened, its bioluminescent patterns shifting to alert crimson. Alicia stepped forward slowly, then deliberately knelt and became completely still, her eyes fixed on the massive predator. The night vale's reaction was immediate and unexpected. Rather than attacking or retreating, it mirrored her posture, lowering itself to a position that brought its sensory organs level with her faceplate. The patterns across its body shifted from crimson to a softer, pulsing blue that matched the ambient forest glow. For several minutes, neither moved. Then, with deliberate slowness, Elysia raised one hand, palm outward, in the universal gesture of peace. The creature's head tilted, its crystalline vocalization softer than before. One of its grasping limbs extended toward her raised hand, stopping just short of contact. Elysia remained kneeling, her hand extended, as the night veil circled her with cautious movements. It never took its sensory organs off her, studying this strange being that moved in controlled patterns, unlike any prey it had encountered before. Then, in a moment that would redefine xenobiological understanding forever, the night veil retreated into the forest. Elysia maintained her position, wondering if this was merely a temporary withdrawal. Her answer came minutes later when the creature returned, carrying something in its grasping limbs. It approached and placed the object on the ground before her, a large, luminescent fruit from one of the forest's higher branches. A food offering. Elysia stared in astonishment. The researcher's theories about social behavior appeared correct. The night veil wasn't just sparing her, it was attempting to care for her, as it might for an injured member of its own species. Moving with the same deliberate slowness, Elysia reached into her survival pack and removed a water container. She placed it on the ground between them, then retreated to her original kneeling position. The night veil investigated the container, eventually figuring out how to remove the cap with its dexterous, grasping limbs. It sampled the water, then looked back at Elysia with what she could only interpret as approval. The bioluminescent patterns across its body shifted to a warm gold color she hadn't observed before. Over the next hour, a tentative routine emerged. The night veil would bring offerings from the forest, fruits, fungi. Once a small, phosphorescent creature, still alive and unharmed, and place them before Elysia. She would offer something in return: water, a ration bar, a small light from her survival kit that particularly fascinated the creature. Through this primitive exchange, a form of communication developed. The night veil began mimicking her gestures, learning to associate specific movements with specific intentions. Elysia found herself similarly attuned to the creature's bioluminescent language, recognizing patterns that indicated curiosity, satisfaction, or alertness. When her chronometer indicated 4 hours until extraction, Elysia faced a new challenge. She needed to move toward the rendezvous coordinates, but any sudden departure might trigger the night veil's hunting instinct, or be perceived as rejection of their newfound understanding. She decided on a direct approach, rising slowly to her feet. She pointed in the direction she needed to travel, then looked at the night veil expectantly. The creature's patterns shifted rapidly between several colors before settling on a questioning blue-green. It rose to its full height, extended a grasping limb toward the same direction, then looked back at Elysia. Taking a calculated risk, she began walking slowly in that direction. The night veil followed, matching her pace exactly, its patterns maintaining the calm blue-green glow that she now associated with curiosity rather than hunting. They traveled together through the bioluminescent forest. Predator and prey transformed into unlikely companions. The night veil occasionally darted ahead to clear obstacles from their path or investigate potential threats, always returning to Elysia's side with the same careful movements that had characterized their exchange. As they approached the rendezvous coordinates, Elysia's communication system suddenly crackled to life. "Rescue shuttle to Apprentice Trent. We have your position. ETA 20 minutes. Please confirm status." It was Pilot Marlowe's voice, tense but professional. Elysia recognized the underlying question. Was she still alive? Or was something else activating her beacon? "This is Trent," she responded clearly. "I am alive and well, but I need to advise caution on approach. I'm not alone. A long pause followed. Apprentice Trent, please clarify. Hostile presence? Alicia looked at the Night Vale, who was studying the sky with obvious interest as the sound of approaching engines became audible, even to her human ears. Negative on hostile presence, she replied. I've established non-aggressive contact with the indigenous apex predator. Request non-threatening approach protocol. The silence that followed was profound. When Marlowe's voice returned, it held disbelief mingled with concern. Apprentice, are you under duress? Please confirm status with authentication code. Alicia provided the code that confirmed she was speaking freely and of sound mind. I repeat, non-threatening approach. The creature responds to movement patterns. Anything perceived as aggressive will trigger defensive behavior. Understood, Marlowe replied, though his tone suggested he was merely humoring what he perceived as a stress-induced delusion. Maintaining standard approach vector. Visual contact in 5 minutes. The rescue shuttle appeared above the forest canopy, its engines disturbing the drifting spores and creating ripples of light through the bioluminescent ecosystem. The Night Vale's patterns shifted to alert yellow, but it remained beside Alicia, seemingly trusting her assessment of this new development. The shuttle settled in a small clearing 50 meters from their position. Its landing ramp extended, and 4 figures in Survey Corps environment suits emerged, weapons raised despite Alicia's instructions. Hold position, she called over the comm system. Lower your weapons. Any aggressive movement will provoke response. To emphasize her point, she placed a hand gently on the Night Vale's lower limb. The creature's patterns rippled in response, but it remained calm, sensing her lack of fear. The rescue team froze, clearly stunned by the sight before them. A Survey Corps apprentice standing in apparent communion with the legendary predator that had claimed so many lives. Alicia! Pilot Marlowe's voice came through her private channel. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. We're going to approach very slowly. The team advanced with exaggerated caution, weapons now pointed downward. The Night Vale watched them with obvious interest, its head tilting as it processed these new beings that moved in the same careful manner as Alicia. When they were within 10 meters, Alicia turned to the Night Vale and performed the same peaceful gesture she had used during their first true contact. Hand raised, palm outward. The creature responded by lowering itself to a less threatening posture, its patterns shifting to the calm blue-green she had come to associate with curiosity. It's communicating, she explained to the astonished rescue team. The patterns, the movements, they're a language. It doesn't see us as prey when we move with intention rather than fear. Pilot Marlowe removed his helmet, a gesture of trust that made Alicia's heart skip. In 15 years of rescue operations, I've never seen anything like this. The report said this thing was unstoppable. It is, Alicia agreed. But it's also intelligent. It can distinguish between threatening and non-threatening movement. The researchers almost figured it out before they were lost. The Night Vale, seemingly satisfied that these new arrivals posed no threat, began to retreat toward the forest edge. Before disappearing into the bioluminescent undergrowth, it turned back to Alicia and emitted the crystalline vocalization she had come to recognize as a form of acknowledgement. It's letting us go, she translated for the bewildered rescue team. It understands we're leaving its territory. As they boarded the shuttle, Alicia paused at the top of the ramp for one final look at Veros 9's breathtaking forest. The Night Vale stood at the tree line, its patterns a peaceful gold against the blues and greens of its environment. Impulsively, she reached into her pack and removed a small collection vial. With quick, practiced movements, she captured several of the luminescent spores drifting through the air, a reminder and proof of what she had experienced. Rescue operation complete, Pilot Marlowe reported as the shuttle lifted off. Apprentice Trent recovered. No hostile engagement. What the official report couldn't capture was the moment of silent communication that passed between human and alien predator as the shuttle rose above the canopy, an understanding that transcended species and evolution, founded on the simple recognition of mutual intelligence. The journey back to Artemis Base passed in a blur of debriefings and medical examinations. Alicia found herself repeating her story to increasingly senior officers and scientists, each more skeptical than the last, about her account of peaceful interaction with the Night Vale. "Your suit recordings confirm your description of events," Dr. Halverson informed her during the final debriefing. But the xenobiology department remains cautious about drawing conclusions. One positive interaction doesn't negate the creature's documented aggression toward previous expeditions. Alicia touched the small vial of bioluminescent spores she had kept hidden from official inventory. "They moved wrong," she said simply. "They ran. They hid. They fought. The Night Vale doesn't just hunt movement. It responds to the intention behind the movement. When I showed it, I wasn't afraid that I wasn't a threat. It responded in kind." "An interesting theory," Halverson conceded. "One that will require substantial testing before any reconsideration of Varos 9's classification as a no-go zone." Alicia nodded, knowing that bureaucracy moved slowly, especially when it came to revising long-held assumptions. But she also knew what she had experienced: a connection across the vast divide of evolution and biology, founded on the simplest of shared understandings. Peace begets peace. "The official record will show that you survived due to exceptional training and resourcefulness," Halverson continued. "Your observations about the Night Vale's behavior patterns will be noted for future research consideration." "And the recommendation for follow-up studies?" Alicia pressed. Halvorson's expression softened slightly. "Has been submitted, with my personal endorsement, for whatever that's worth." It was something. A beginning. Alicia thought of the Night Vale, now doubtless continuing its solitary patrol through the bioluminescent forest. How many other supposed monsters throughout human exploration had simply been misunderstood? How many opportunities for connection had been lost to fear and presumption? In her quarters that night, she held the vial of spores up to the light, watching the tiny particles pulse with the same ethereal rhythm as the forest that had nearly claimed her life. They responded to her movements, brightening when she turned the vial, dimming when she held it still, a microcosm of the complex ecosystem she had briefly shared. Officially, her report would be filed away, perhaps to inform some future expedition decades hence, when Varos 9's resources became valuable enough to justify the perceived risk. But Alicia knew that her experience had changed more than just scientific understanding. It had challenged the fundamental assumption that difference necessarily meant danger. The Night Vale hunted all that moved, until the human girl sat still and it brought her food. A simple story that contained a profound truth. Sometimes, survival required not fighting or fleeing, but simply being still, long enough to be truly seen. In the darkness of her quarters, the bioluminescent spores glowed with a warm, golden light, the same color the Night Vale's patterns had shown in their final moment of communion. Not the blue-green of curiosity or the indigo of hunting, but something entirely new, something Alicia chose to interpret as understanding. Somewhere across the stars, on a planet bathed in perpetual twilight, an apex predator continued its ancient patterns, hunting, feeding, surviving. But perhaps now, it carried with it the memory of a strange encounter, a being that had neither fled nor fought, that had offered water in exchange for fruit and stillness in place of fear. And perhaps, in that memory, lay the seeds of something new, a bridge across the vast gulf that separated predator from prey, alien from human, fear from understanding, a testament to the power of stillness in a universe defined by constant motion. Alicia fell asleep with the vial clutched in her hand. Its gentle glow, a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength came not from movement, but from the courage to remain perfectly still.